Mediterranean and the beautiful countryside of Bandol, where that stunning rosé wine is made. Bienvenue, bonjour, and welcome to the stunning south of France. And Paul Ricard for round 2 of the Fanatec Esports GT Pro Series. Once again, the best GT3 drivers in the world will be going head-to-head in our Fanatec arena on Assetto Corsa Competizione for real-world championship points in the Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Endurance Cup. Nestled near the medieval town of Le Castellet near Marseille, surrounded by countryside and vineyards, and enjoying almost 3,000 hours of sunshine each year, it's little wonder French businessman Paul Ricard liked it here. After making his fortune creating his own pastis, he built the circuit in 1969. Home of many a French Grand Prix, the track can actually have as many as 167 different layouts, making it perhaps the most versatile circuit in the world. Anyway, enough of the history lesson. It really is such a stunning place around here. But I'm getting distracted. We've got a rendezvous with round 2. It's been 6 weeks since the first round in Monza, Italy, and the Fanatec Arena has now been transported here with its 28 rigs. It was a fantastic first round with Alexei Nesov taking victory for Madpanda, one of the real supporters of the championship. Let's take a look at the highlights. Are going racing for the first time in 2023 in the Fanatec Arena. And it's not a fantastic start from Sandy Mitchell. Marius Zug looking to have got the jump, and an even better start from third position. That is Nesov trying to make it 3 wide going into turn 1. There was a little bit of contact, I think, in the middle part of the field. Yet there further back, a Lamborghini going a little bit wide, and a spinner in the middle of the pack as well. As usual, a little bit of chaos at Monza at turn 1. Well, Sandy Mitchell's dropped from first to 4th position. This is Mercedes versus Mercedes for the lead of the race. Nesov down the inside, and a nice clean move into the Parabolica to take the lead of the race from Marius Zug. Wide at Ascari, and Max Hesse this time gets it done. Little bit of contact, but that BMW is strong and stays on the track and stays on the racing line. So you don't say Audi. And look at how close this is. And look down the inside, contact between 2-3 cars. Oh, Dries van Thor, that unfortunately, mate, it's all your fault. That's the right place to be for the Parabolica. This is a change in position for gold, and he moves up into 3rd position with a slightly later on the brakes and holds the position. A little bit of an overlap, not very much. Pulcini's going to have to be very brave on the brakes, and he does. Back down the inside. Does he get the apex? No. Oh, there's contact. Oh, that's really unlucky contact.
We're looking now at Nielsen side by side. A little bit of kiss as well, just to let you know you're there. And through goes the 51, and round goes the 51. We've got a roadblock.
Oh, no. Not really advisable, but they managed to make it stick. Whoa, big slide from Alex Acker, and Charlie Fagg did a great job not to collect that accident. 1 minute and 130 seconds penalty, and therefore Alexei Nesov is the first winner of 2023 in his Mercedes for Madpanda. What a great idea. Madpanda have been a mainstay of the championship since we began 3 years ago, but a new name to the top of the timesheets, even though it's the same team. Alexei Nesov taking the victory, and Alexei, new to ACC, new to the championship, Where does your sim experience come from to beat the guys that have been doing this for so long?
Well, last couple of years I was away from the real racing, and I was doing sim racing quite professionally. I mostly do iRacing, and it obviously helped me to adapt quickly. But still, it was a new game for me. It wasn't as easy as I would expect.
Right, let's have a look then at the Paul Ricard circuit. It's a circuit that we come to every single year in the Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe. And is it a circuit that you enjoy, Lexi?
It is really interesting circuit and really tough. Not similar to any others I drove. So it's completely opposite, I would say, from Monza. With really long corners, you know, and at the same time there are like slow corners. You have to work a lot with the brakes, trail a lot. So yeah, here we come on the lap.
And reference-wise, because it's so tarmacked, it's difficult, presumably, to find where you need to brake.
I mean, it's not that hard here. The braking point is this curve. Go down to third, try to rotate the car, not go too wide. Small lift here and no throttle. With some understeer, the car getting pushed on the outside. Same in the sim and in real life, it's tough. So here coming to the next corner, we need to turn to the left.
And have you got a car that's pretty low downforce to deal with that long straight, and so through the fiddly stuff is a bit loose?
It depends on the balance. Even with the low downforce, you can make the car quite lazy. So it really depends on the setup.
And then what do you do on the long straight? I've always wondered this. Do you ever start thinking about what you're going to have for dinner and think away from the racing?
Could be sometimes. Yeah, I can send a message to my girlfriend or parents or something, so they don't lose me. But yeah, just thinking of the next corner, which is quite tricky and really tough to do. It's hard to hit it quickly. You need to brake really little, keep the speed throughout, not go off track.
So there is a little bit of a lift at the end of the straight then, is there?
There is a small brake.
Okay.
You have to go down and really careful on the throttle, so it's blowing away all the time, so it's hard to hit. And then you need to prepare the next corner really quickly.
Get the nose
Also, you have always hard to hit it perfectly with the pedaling and with the steering, with the line.
What's race control saying about track limits? Because everything's very flat, the curbs as well. So how far off the track can we be allowed to go?
In the sim or in the real life?
In both.
In the real life, I think we got the new rule that it's properly wide lines now. Previously, in some corners, you were able to run off and return on track in time before the floppies. Now it's only wide lines. In sim, it's a bit easier. Yeah, you can basically use the old rules. So as the game says, in some corners, if you run over the wide line, it's not a problem, but then you need to come back before the floppies.
It's very interesting, isn't it, the way that the different platforms deal with off tracks. I think ACC's why I really prefer how it kind of works out if you've made an advantage or not.
Well, in most of the places, it's good, actually. It makes sense. Sometimes it can be a bit played around, you know, so that you can cut more or something. But in general, yeah, it looks good. It looks quite similar to real life, and yeah, it's not easy. It's not hard to predict.
Yeah. Lexi, congratulations on the win from round one. Is it something you're going to be able to repeat this time?
Well, I definitely hope so. This time will be definitely easier. The track fits Mercedes a bit worse. Plus, I have this success ballast.
Yeah.
So it will be tough, but definitely aiming for it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And Paul Ricard being the first track that we'll have used in all three of our seasons, so will consistency have an effect on our championship? Now, have you ever wanted or wondered what kind of kit you needed to get involved in sim racing? You'll have seen in the Fanatec arena, each driver has exactly the same provided rig from Fanatec. So we sent Paul Jeffrey to have a look in closer detail at the rigs in the arena and also what you could use at home.
Thank you very much, Ben. And these are the rigs that our pro sim drivers are using this season. So let's take an opportunity to have a quick look at some of the equipment that we've got in play. I'll start with the rig itself. This is the Fanatec Rennsport version 2 cockpit from Fanatec, and it retails around €1,000. This is particularly interesting because it's tubular frame, and one of the most important aspects of a racing rig is rigidity. There's absolutely no flex in this one, so that doesn't affect the way that the wheel and the pedals and the driver feels the car in sim, which is critical in these kind of situations. Bolted to this rig, we have got the Fanatec Podium DD2 wheelbase. This is a direct drive wheelbase, which is argued to be the top of the line in sim racing peripherals. These are around €1,500. And joined onto that, we have the Podium wheel rim that has the Fanatec button module and the adapter onto the wheelbase to allow it to work in the Fanatec ecosystem. These come in around €600, but they're an array of choices that you have available depending on what kind of wheel rim you're comfortable with. You can drive in formulas, some have LCD displays on them, and some are even replicas of their real-life counterparts, like the BMW rim that is used in the actual GT3 BMW as well. So there's a real level of immersion there, and that's very much down to a sim racer's preference. If we move on to the floor, we've then got the Club Sport version 3 pedals. These are around €300, and these are an incredibly important tool to a sim racer's armoury because the pedals are where you get the feel in the car, where you get the feel under braking and acceleration. So very much down to driver preference, how they set their pedals up. We've got a brake performance kit on this particular one that makes the brake just a little bit tougher to use to allow you an extra level of modularity. And then for the PC itself, this is again very user dependent. Here we're using the RTX 400 series PC, we're using the i7 1300 CPU, and you can enter at a lower level than that one. You'll have to turn the graphics down a little bit. But for the average user at home, it very much depends on what their needs are as to how much horsepower that we're going to use in our PC. And we're using this monitor, which is the Samsung Odyssey G9. These are around €1,000. This is very much a high-end monitor. It's a curved, large 49-inch screen. Some drivers prefer at home to use triple screens, so 3 32-inch monitors. Some drivers use virtual reality. Some drivers use just a single screen. But we like this one because it's compact, it's neat, you can get a good field of view, and you've got a good overall view for the drivers as well for all the information on track and to see their rivals around. Fanatec do a whole array of sim racing hardware, so they can get different cockpits, you can get different steering wheels and podium mounts as well. It all depends on what the end user wants from their experience. Roughly speaking, including the flight case to help us take these rigs around the world, you're looking at around €1,300 for this entire setup. But we live in glorious times and there is a lot of choice out there, so a sim driver can tailor it very much to their needs. And this is what our drivers here today at Paul Ricard and for the remainder of the season will be using to do battle in the SRO Esports series. So without further ado, I think it's time to go racing.
Paul, it is indeed time to go racing here in the Fanatec Arena. It's Friday afternoon, local here in Paul Ricard. We've just had practice for the real world circuit. We just had a storm as well outside, but the sun is back out again and we are gearing up for the 6-hour race on Saturday evening from 6 o'clock local time here in Paul Ricard. But firstly, sim racing of two different kinds. Firstly, behind us, we have the real world drivers in the car, and then during the 6 hours, actually, we'll have the sim racing drivers joining us. And joining us too is our expert, Paul Jeffrey. Round two, from what we've seen from qualifying, Paul, it's very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a completely different circuit. There's a balance of performance that have been applied to the cars. We see regularly in real and virtual, Ben, that certain cars suit certain kinds of circuit. And here it does look very much like we're going to have one or two different cars in contention for the win. 9/10 of a second covered qualification. It is he who makes the least mistakes, I think, has got the biggest chance in this race.
As you can see, we're in the heart of the Paul Ricard circuit, right in the centre of the paddock with the drivers and teams working just across the way in the pit lane. It's something so very special about this SRO Esports event, not just from our perspective, but also from the sim racers who come here. When they perform, usually they're in a stadium arena setting like this, but not in the centre of the paddock of a premium motorsports event.
Yeah, and I think that's a massive thing for SRO Esports, and it's incredible that we've delivered this Fanatec Arena. We brought these rigs all the way around the world, set them up identically for each driver, but as you say, Ben, I've spoken to many people during the weekend so far, This is a thoroughbred part of the SRO strategy. This is not a bolt-on somewhere in Paddock 14, 6 miles away from the media office. This is in the heart of everything. This is exactly where we need to be to grow sim racing.
Yeah, and all thanks to Fanatec for coming up with the idea, for Stefan Rattel for saying it's a good idea, and then for AK Esports for making it happen. Because all three of those were big, big challenges. As you can see, more and more we see the virtual world helping the real world out here. And having this virtual championship for the professional sim races on site has only upped the level of the race we're about to see, because we've got those drivers here helping the real world guys out. Yeah,
they're helping both in terms of how to comprehend racing competitively in the sim, but it's also the telemetry is the same as real life. The telemetry the sim kicks out is identical to what the real cars kick out, so you can work together on an even keel, on an even level, and both insert your own skills and experiences and knowledge into it to make the overall package faster, which is, for me, as a sim racer that's never going to race a car realistically at this level, that's mind-blowing.
Over the last 2 years, we've seen teams giving their drivers a go, and multiple changes throughout the season of different drivers representing the team. Because the team that are represented, it's a team that take the points, not the drivers themselves. But interesting to look at the entry list that we've got on for this round. There are only 4 changes across the 24 cars. So we're starting to see teams now sticking with the best driver to get the most amount of points, because those points really matter in the real world these days.
And I think that's exactly right. That tells me that these teams are taking this seriously now. It's not a case of we have a requirement to participate, so who draws the short straw to go and sit in a hot Fanatec arena for an hour? This is serious business for these teams. It means something. They want to deliver the best result possible. And for us as broadcasters and the folks at home, that's great, because you become accustomed to certain drivers and their techniques and their rivalries, and it just tells the story even better, doesn't it?
We spoke a lot in the pre-show about Alexei Nesov. He then now carries ballast, because the success from the first round means that you are slightly hamstrung in these rounds moving forward.
Yeah, and that's another thing that the driver has to account for in their setup, and that's where, yes, you get this in real life, balance of performance is absolutely in the real world, but in sim racing, it may affect the cars in different ways. And this is where our real drivers and our sim pros can really help each other out, because our pros have been in this situation before and they can amend things.
Right then, let's get through the grid then. We've got a BMW on the pole, Neil Verhagen on the right-hand side, winner of round 1 last year. Alongside him, as he was in round 1 in the Lamborghini, Sandy Mitchell to the left. Another BMW on the second row, Callan Williams for WRT. Great to see them right up there with Fabrizio Cristani alongside him. Another Lamborghini at the sharp end, and the third of our BMWs with Dries van Thor in 5th position. Then we get the all-conquering Ferrari from round 1 alongside him in 6th, Nicholas Nilsson aboard that one.
Yep, absolutely. Car number 99 is Alex Acker in the Audi R8, the fastest of the Audis on the grid so far. And then Anscha van Goeven in the Pro class for the Porsche 911 GT3R lines up in position number 8. That is car 96 you see on your screen. Lauren Heinrich is 9th on the grid. And Alexei Nesov, as we said, winner last time out, a disappointed 10th.
Akurtis ASP represented in the 87 car by Thomas Drouet. Alongside him is the Boutsen VDS machine. A change in that particular car. Adam Etsky is driving that machine. And then his teammate alongside him, Cesar Gazou, another driver that we have not yet seen in the Fanatec arena. Boutsen right in the center of the pack. Alongside them, the Iron Lynx Lamborghini of Leonardo Pulcini. And then Come To You Racing, number 11, represented by Gilles Magnus.
Yep, so as we're moving down now to 16th on the grid, so this is where the field is starting to tighten up. We have got Christopher Mies in the Audi R8 for Santalot Junior team for the Pro category in car 25. Marius Hu, who won his classification in gold and finished second outright last time, is 17th on the grid in the Mercedes, and Daniel D'Amato is for company, 18th place, silver classification, driving the Porsche. We move down to Nicholas Bart in 19th place for Come To You Racing, another one of the Audis in 19th, and 20th is Nikolai Kiergaard in car number 159.
Jordan Pepper right down there in 21st position, only just got onto his rig in time, coming from the paddock. Owen Bastard alongside him. Then we have on the final row of the grid, Sam de Jong and Mattia Drudi. 24 cars will take the start. 27 were on the entry list. 3 did not turn up. And that means that they don't get any points, because this year there are points and money, especially down to the very last finisher, but you do need to finish to pick up that check.
Yep, absolutely. Now, going back to qualifying for a second, Ben, because we saw the grid, but we didn't see the times.
Yeah.
Anybody might be at home thinking, some of these guys will have prepped, some of these guys won't. I just want to look at my sheet on the desk for a moment, so apologies for looking down. 1 second covers the top 12 drivers. 1.5 seconds covers the top 21. That's sim racing level of proximity of closeness of times. Everybody is giving everything they've got in these races, aren't they?
Well, you saw Marius Zug fighting for the lead into turn 1, taking the lead into turn 1 in Monza, and he only will start 17th on the grid here. So expect it to be very, very frenetic on those first couple of corners. Everyone will try and stay out of trouble, but trouble is something that we do see a lot of in sim racing. I don't know why, because these guys have got the same brains as they have on the real world circuit, but for some reason, they're a little happier to knock doors out there in the virtual world than the real.
They are, and Paul Ricard's the kind of circuit that can encourage that kind of light contact, racing side by side, dives into the braking zone. So hopefully everybody gets through the first couple of laps calmly, lets a rhythm start to begin. And Ben, as always, for anybody that's new to the world of SRO Esports, this is a 60-minute race with a mandatory pit stop window as well, so there's some strategy for our drivers to think.
And if you missed Monza, then you will have missed the fact that we have 3 different classes now to follow. So we have 3 different races within this single race. We have the gold class, of course, we have the pro class, and we have the silver class. I've done that around the wrong way. Pro, gold, and silver. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we should expect to see a pro class driver win the race, because the classes come from the real world championship, which is a combination of 3 different drivers to dictate what class they sit in. Obviously, we've only got 1 driver here, and that 1 driver doesn't necessarily reflect the grading of the team as a whole. So we have seen in the past a silver class driver from the real world win in the virtual world, and it's quite possible to happen again today. But 3 different classes, and the points then get transferred, you see, from here into the real world. That's why those points are very important. 5 for the win in your class, down to 5th position, you get 1 point.
Yeah, and that can be vital for a team's championship standings at the end of the season, or to kickstart their campaign. So make no mistake, everybody that's racing today, they want to win, because they're racing drivers, they're having to win, but they want those points for virtual and for real. And we can see the Fanatec Arena, we've got some spectators in here, we're looking forward to a good race. But Ben, just like real life, rolling start formation lap, and at this moment the drivers are just warming up their tyres, warming up their brakes, and getting themselves ready for a tricky first corner.
Yeah, and we've got an 8 o'clock local time start, so we're going to be racing into twilight, exactly what we'll see tomorrow evening for the real world 6 hours here in Paul Ricard. And that always provides us with lovely pictures from the ACC platform that does sunset and sunrise so well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's something for the drivers to think about. The sun is setting in game. That's going to obscure their view. It's not perfect vision that you're going to have through your cockpit window. So you've got to account for that one as well, and how much preparation in these conditions have the drivers put in. How many of them will use that for an excuse for a stupid lunch? We'll find that one out in 60 minutes time. So it's all these things that you've got to take into consideration, just like real life.
Great to have Neil Verhagen in the pole position for BMW. Rover Racing is the team. BMW Junior team is where he was a part of. That junior team effectively disbanding but still existing because the program finished, but they were all so good that they've all carried on. Neil Verhagen won by a massive margin last year in the first round when we were at Imola. And actually, I think did quite well in the second round as well, because I remember interviewing him here about that victory, because he came in as a complete rookie and cleared the field. But they do seem to rotate their drivers. So we saw Max Hesse aboard that Rover 998 in the first round, but Verhagen, I think, has the edge over Hesse and Dan Harper. Sorry, boys, but I think he does. And so therefore, pole position there. 3rd position for the WRT, number 30, and the 32 of Dries van Thor. So difficult to see him not driving an Audi, but he is now driving a BMW for WRT. We've got an army of BMWs going into turn 1 on the inside line. They've got that, but then of course turn 2 being a right-hander, it's the outside line and it's off camber and.
And it's something to think about as well. The BMW is a very competitive car on this track. It's good over the curbs. But if you're good over the curbs here, Ben, as you mentioned in the pre-show piece, that opens up a risk factor of going over track limits and getting a game-inspired penalty. So we'll find all these questions out, Ben, but we're coming around the final corner, so let's go racing.
Keep the park nice and tight. Make sure you're in the box. Make sure you're doing what the game wants you to do so you don't get a penalty. We are going racing here in Paul Ricard for round 2 of the Pro Series Championship. And there, green flag flies, 8:10 in-game time for an hour's worth of racing. And the BMW is going to have the inside line into turn 1, but it's not such a good start for WRT further back, and a big gap into turn 1 between the first 2 and 3rd position.
Yeah, everybody bunches up middle of the pack, somebody running a little bit slower further down the order, but luckily everyone gets through clear, and Sandy Mitchell's not giving up on this one.
Sandy Mitchell only getting into the sim about 2 minutes before we started this race, and yet really on the back of that BMW. Remember, tyres are not at optimum temperature, brakes are not at optimum temperature right now. They are still struggling to make sure their car is comfortable underneath them, and so the BMW is now going to punch a nice big hole down the Mistral straight for those Lamborghinis behind to sit in and slipstream. Mitchell is in 3rd, Cristani 4th, Van Thor in 5th, so it was Callum Williams who dropped from 3rd down to 6th position at the start.
Yeah, good slipstream here from Sandy Mitchell over Verhagen ahead. Goes to the outside line. That's not where you need to be. This is a risky position to be on the opening lap. He'll slip back in, I think, Ben, if he doesn't have the overlap coming through the right-hander. But Mitchell keep it to the outside, and there we go. Back in again. That's not an attempt to overtake. That's an attempt to pressure the car in front.
And this place is where really the best of the overtaking, because you have an early apex and then you have a very, very late apex. And if you hold the tighter line, as we see from Fabio Cristani, you can nab that second apex and try and get alongside. But unfortunately, the track then goes left, and that is now compromised. Both of them, and look at the BMW. Dries Van Thor just gets that little bit closer. It's very close in the top 5 for the moment, and then a small gap to Nicholas Nilsson, who has always been so strong in the Ferrari, whether it be the old Ferrari or the brand new 296 that we have in ACC for about 6 weeks now.
Yeah, great stuff from all of our front drivers. Everybody's through the opening lap quite clearly. No real significant movers and shakers down the order. But it just goes to show that these drivers aren't content to hold on at this stage, are they? We saw from Sandy Mitchell getting aggressive for the race lead, and a bit of a fight from Govan further down.
Shane Govan trying to go around the outside of Callum Williams. He really hasn't got that car underneath him on this first lap, has he? Williams down to 10th position now as Govan muscles his way past. Govan has always been a specialist on one platform, but more and more seems to be more comfortable with all the different platforms that gets thrown at him. Remember, he is a Porsche Works sim driver as well as a Porsche Works real driver, such as the Turks experience. 9th position now with Thomas Drouet just in front of him, and good battles further back. I'm interested to see Alexei Nesov only 20th.
Yeah, really bad start for Nesov, not having a good qualification, not having a good opening lap. There's still plenty of racing to do, but he's going to have to work hard now to move himself gradually into contention at the front of the field. We're seeing now a little bit of a fight just outside the top 10, and this is the key part of the track, Ben. Ooh, very, very close to pit wall there, but we just about managed to avoid a massive accident, but great piece of avoidance there in the fight just outside the top 10 positions.
There is Alexei Nesov trying to make some amends now that we are slightly warmed up. He's got extra ballast on that car. He switches to the inside. He's got a spinner further back. Who was that? I think that was Mattia Drudi, who'd made good progress up the first couple of laps, but now has dropped to the tail of the field. Perhaps contact with Adam Etke.
Yeah, those two drivers both dropping down 23rd and 24th position. Everybody who's watching at home, by the way, a big welcome to say hello to this broadcast. Thank you for tuning in. Drop us a message in the chat on YouTube. We'll try our best to give that a call out and answer your questions, so please do let us know.
Drive-through penalty for Pulcini in 10th position. Drive-through penalty for Gilles Magnus in 19th at the moment. And a change for Lauren Heinrich, who goes up into 6th position ahead of Nicholas Nilsson. We're looking at 18th position. This is our championship leader. And there is Nicholas Nilsson, who has moved, according to that timing screen, behind Lauren Heinrich. Yeah, there's Lauren Heinrich. So that's changed again, I think.
Yeah, so this has been a bit of a seesaw. This is what happens at this kind of racetrack at Paul Ricard. It's a wide circuit. There's an opportunity to fight back almost immediately if you're in any kind of strife with a driver. If you're racing against them, if you don't cover your line, you will lose that position. That is Pulcini that we're looking at in 10th position. So Williams just following in his coattails, but a drive-through penalty, Ben, that's going to really, really hurt Pulcini's prospects.
Yeah, and I wonder what that was for, because we did see someone go round at turn 1, didn't we? But I haven't been able to identify exactly who it was.
We did see a few drive-through notifications pop up on the screen at the start for being out of position as well, so whether that sticks or whether that's removed later on, we'll see in the fullness of time.
One of the big things about ACC is when you make contact with another car, when you damage your car, the biggest punishment you get from the game is top speed. And down the Mistral straight, the longest straight that we have in the championship, it's going to hurt them so much. And I think I can't visibly see any problems with Pulcini's car, but I'm pretty sure that he has an issue as further back. Who is that?
That was Jordan Pepper, I think, getting all sideways in the Lamborghini. So Pepper, a great catch actually. It's so difficult to bring the car back when you get that rotation going and you start to lose the rear, but he's lost ground as well.
Oh, momentum too. And again, once you overheat the tyres in ACC, it takes a while to get them back to where you need them to be. A nice little switch move there on Gilles Magnus, who seems to have a stop-go 30-second penalty. I wonder whether that's from the game or from our race direction. We go on board with Jordan Pepper.
It's so hard at this time if you're Jordan Pepper as well to get your head back into the game because you've been attacked from behind. You're trying to recover your composure from the incident. You're bringing your car back in to the zone as well. And Pepper's got a lot of work to do with Magnus ahead, but also for company. Nessov snapping away behind.
But look at the damage that Gilles Magnus has got on that Audi. There's no doubt that going down the Mistral, he's going to be seriously compromised. And maybe that's why he's got Jordan Pepper. He's got Alexei Nessov. And he's also got D'Amato crawling all over the back of the gearbox of his machine.
And you often find in these scenarios, when you're in a little battle pack like this, you start making mistakes. We see Jordan Pepper running deep and losing position, but then immediately going back on the attack again.
Right, replay of turn 1 then. Really poor start from Callum Williams. He's right on the inside. Any contact further back? A Boutsen car goes slow. And, oh man, that's Alexei Nessov being shoveled off the circuit. And I wonder whether that is why Pulcini has a drive-through penalty, because it was the 19 Lamborghini that was behind him. Yeah,
a little bit messy that one, and unfortunate for Nessov too. That's a real big disadvantage at the early part of the race. He's recovering well in 17th, but we talked about it in quali. The quality and speed of this field is so high. You can't just dig around in 5-10 seconds to your rivals.
It didn't feel like a hit, so maybe it doesn't have the damage that you would get from big contact, but it was more kind of a, off you go. I'm accelerating and you're not accelerating quite as quickly as I am out of turn 1. Being a little bit careful. It's off camber there, isn't it? So if you don't have the confidence or the tyre performance, then you are just going to be tickling the throttle rather than slamming it down like you can when you're up to speed.
And such is the danger in pack racing, isn't it? You've got to be cautious in the opening laps. You don't want to make a mistake, lock a tyre. But actually, Alexei Nessov now is on the charge again. So Pepper is the Lamborghini to the inside. Nessov doesn't really need to be on that outside, but can he get the switch back under braking? Pepper, remember, has had a few moments over these last couple of laps, and maybe his confidence is a little bit lower than it would be. Aggressive over the curbs, though. That unsettles the Lamborghini. And it seems to me like Nessov is very much forcing the issue for the run down the Mistral.
We're looking at Alexei Nessov in our inset. He looks a little bit ruffled, doesn't he? But I love about sim racing so much when you're in an environment like this. You get to see the driver's face. You get to see the grit in his teeth. Rather than when you've got a helmet on, you just see the eyes sometimes. You could see that he was shrugging and he was frustrated by where Jordan Pepper is placing his Lamborghini. Better run from the Mercedes onto the straight, but the Lamborghini is strong down the straight. Now in the slipstream, will he have any space? Pepper is holding that inside line. Goes to the outside, but as you said before, Paul, it's not the place you really want to be going into this long, fast right-hander of Senior.
Yeah, this is the danger zone for Alexei Nessov now. Ben, will he drop back in? I'm sure he'll drop back into position.
We're trying around the outside. That's brave. Can he make this one stick? He stays just about on track limits. Jordan Pepper gives him a little bit of space on the inside. Now the switchback. Was there contact there? Jordan Pepper thinks there was. That was very, very spicy from Pepper, and he loses the rear again. Blimey, car control, 10 out of 10. But unfortunately, momentum, not so much. Will race control say that that was ABC, advantage by contact? But Nesov through, and for the moment, checking out.
Yep, absolutely. I think that was maybe a little love tap. And there we go, another slide from Jordan Pepper. He's got those tyres now into that zone where they're just too hot. They're not giving him the grip he needs. He's not got the confidence in the rear of the car, seesaw in the wheel, and that's only going to compound lap after lap unless he calms everything down, just cools the car down.
Thomas Drouet in 8th position has just passed Lauren Heinrich. Lauren Heinrich in the, whoa, that was a big contact. Who was that? One of the Audis smashing into the inside wall of turn 1. And that is going to cause, I mean, it's not going to be a retirement, but it's going to cause a massive issue for that car. I think that might have been either Nicolas Bart or Gilles Magnus. One of the two Come To You Racing Audis.
Yes, it was Gilles Magnus. He's dropped all the way down now and immediately goes down pit lane. So I fear Gilles Magnus's day is done in this race, into a retirement. The car, as you said, Ben, the Come To You machine, heavily damaged already, and that is just one heavy contact too many. So Gilles Magnus, sadly, looks like he's going to say goodbye to us.
And he's got a penalty for being out of position at the start, and that is an in-game penalty where the game decides that you have gained an advantage by where you are starting. It's something I love about this platform. They've integrated into it, because in the real world it's not something you could do to say a car in the middle of the pack is out of position at the start, but unfortunately he has been deemed to be so. Callum Williams, very fast in qualifying, but is just being bullied in the race, isn't he? And Aychan Guvin slips up the inside into 8th spot.
So here we go, this is a replay of the Jordan Pepper incident. There is Gilles Magnus, just tries to get the car back on the inside, not aware or not confident enough of the placement of that Lamborghini, bounces straight into the wall, and Magnus now will be using these next few corners to feel the steering. Is the car straight? Is it performing? And then clearly decides, that's not worked out too well, get down pit lane and get a fix on.
But the thing is, he knows that if he finishes, he gets the money. So he is inspired to keep going. At the moment, we've got 24 cars still circulating. And that is great work from all the organisers to encourage these guys not to bail out after an incident such as that. Because in the previous years, we would have seen Gilles Magnus going, oh, I've had a crash, I'm never going to get in the top 3, I'm never going to earn anything out of this, so I might as well go and have my pasta. But now there is a reason to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing a few stewards' decisions working their way through the system. We'll come back to that in a moment when the outcome has been decided. But we're looking at Guvin now in 9th position for the Dynamic GT Uber Racing Porsche. And Guvin, as you say, has got form in real and virtual world. So he kind of, I don't want to say expect, but anticipate being a little bit higher than this, I think, coming into the event. 9th position, Heinrich just ahead. That Porsche's not really on song at the moment.
And it's one of those things that you talk to professional sim racers about, that each platform has such different characteristics. It's like jumping from a Lamborghini to a BMW to an Audi. They are completely different vehicles to feel, and you need to change your styles to make the best out of them. You can be an amazing Porsche driver, but really struggle to then jump into an Audi and make it work. And it's exactly the same with sim racing platforms. And that's why I love the guys that are incredible across all platforms. A pure sim racer, in my opinion, and Paul, you're a much more associated sim racing than I am, needs to be good on all platforms, whether it be ACC, iRacing, rFactor 2, others exist, including those that are more necessarily celebrated like Formula 1. If you can master all of them, then you're a proper sim racing legend.
Yeah, absolutely. It's adaptability. Same as everything. Physics are the same thing, a car, tyres, wheel, circuit, but there are nuances between each platform. It's how quick you can see those nuances, understand them, process them, and then exploit them to the best, just like in real life. You can't go on to Paul Ricard circuit tomorrow for the race and set the weather conditions. You see what you get and you get what you get. And that's very similar to sim racing. But meanwhile, Gilles Magnus, by the way, has a 10-second stop and go penalty for some of the shenanigans that occurred on the opening lap.
Yeah, and he served that already, so it's now clear. The only one that's still hanging about is Porcini's drive-through penalty that's from the start of the race, from being out of position. It doesn't seem as though, according to the timing screens, he served that, although he's actually serving it right now.
Yeah, he needed to get that one out of the way in the mandated 3 laps, otherwise that's going to expand to a larger penalty. We're looking at Sandy Mitchell, by the way. Second position so far, was he was on his tippy toes at the start of this race, looking to try and find a way into the lead, but he's kind of dropped back now, half a second, a tenth here. Sandy Mitchell's, is he resting that car is the question? Is he just getting some fresh air and attacking again, looking after his tyres, or is he looking for pace?
Porsche versus Porsche, Heinrich and Guven, they are sometimes teammates in the virtual world, and now they're going battles drawn, trying to get around this BMW of WRT. Still our leader in their particular class, and that is the gold category. So Callum Williams, despite qualifying a lot higher than where he's running right now, is still going to be picking up 5 points. So I guess he's probably okay with being passed by the pros and the silvers, because ultimately he's still earning the maximum amount of points he could. But he needs to be careful, because Marius Zug is also part of that category and is coming up strong.
And that's the thing, isn't it? And it's same in any kind of multi-class or multi-category race. If you're squabbling with people that you aren't necessarily fighting for the class position, you're losing time. And Marius Zug, we know from last race, is incredibly quick. So that's not time that Williams can afford to give away at this stage.
So race control have given a penalty to Jordan Pepper. And as you can see, 5-second penalty for causing a collision with D'Amato on lap 1. So race control are always living in the past, and they're always a couple of laps behind. The other amazing thing about sim racing is they've got every angle under the sun, and they're able to replay it multiple times, as many times as they want. So they can really make an informed decision about the penalties that are being given out. And they are living in lap 1, checking for the contacts that have happened. And Jordan Pepper, just a 5-second penalty, so he can clear that in the pits when he makes that pit stop. Well, 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away from the window opening.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Ben. You're absolutely right. For these time penalties, if they stop within the pit window, they have to wait for the prerequisite time, 5 seconds, before they can work on the car, and that gets taken away. If they get a penalty outside of the pit window or don't come down pit lane, it's added to their race time. So for Pepper, at least he can serve that one, and he'll know for the final portion of the race exactly where he stands, and that pit window does open in about 3 minutes' time.
Watching Lonan Heinrich here, he's been passed by Ayachan Guven, and Guven is checking out. So once again, I think we saw this in round 1 in Monza, that Guven doesn't seem to have the 1-lap pace in that car, but when it comes to race conditions, he gets himself into a rhythm like we see so often from Ayachan Guven, and is able to increase that pace. I mean, we're seeing so many lap times improving on this lap over the previous lap, even though we're now 8 laps into the race. They are still finding time.
Yeah, the car's getting lighter, the tyres are endurance tyres, so they're very comfortable, can last for a roughly 30-minute stint before they have to make their mandatory stop and change tyres. So the pace will only begin to drop, the temperature of the circuit is getting a little bit lower as well, more rubber is being laid down, and I know it sounds daft, but they're getting more confidence and experience.
On board with Neil Verhagen, winner in the GT Pro Series previously in last year's championship. And he's leading, but only just by Sandy Mitchell. Mitchell had a disastrous lap 1 in Monza, having qualified in 2nd position and fell down into the pack, got bullied really. And once there was a little bit of contact with that car, it then didn't have the top speed that it needed so badly in Monza, and it fell down into the pack. And I think by the end of the race, Sandy Mitchell was at the very tail of the field, I seem to remember. Here, though, he's kept that nose clean, and he really is sticking with Neil Verhagen, making Neil think and work. This is not the clean pair of heels that he showed everybody in Monza last year, where he checked out, I think, won by 30-odd seconds. There's 1/10 between the two of them right now. Yeah, that K-Pax Racing Lamborghini is looking incredibly fast at this stage in the race. He looks confident, does Sandy Mitchell, in the behaviour of the car, in the balance of the car, and that's critical. The balance will change just like real life, but at the moment Mitchell got the car on the tippy toes, and I think he's trying to find a way now to either pressure Verhagen or at least find a way past before the pit window. And that does present an opportunity, doesn't it? The pit window will allow drivers to go in. They don't have to change their tyres. They can put 1 lap of fuel in only. They have to put 1 lap of fuel in, though, and then go back out. So we could see the undercut, the overcut, that kind of thing work out. And it's interesting to see the ebb and flow from Fabrizio Crestani behind, quite close now to Sandy Mitchell as they come across the line. finding 0.7 of a second on that lap to draw back alongside the Lamborghini ahead of him, when previously there was a decent gap between them. So it does seem as though there is things being played, and actually that he has the best lap of the race, does Crestani. And there are games being played amongst these top 4. Then there's a gap to Alex Acker, who's in 5th spot, the first of the Audis. But they are very, very close at top 4 as we switch our attention further back. Adam Etke has got himself a 5-second penalty as well for incidents earlier on in the race for Boots and VDS.
And Etke's maybe one of those drivers that's been very much in the heat of all of the dramas. Bart ahead in the Comp2U car as well is the next up the road. He recently just cleared Kiergarden and he seems to have the pace to Etke. In fact, I think Bart decides that's not one I want to be involved in. Gives him the racing room, lets Etke get on with his job in hand, and that's quite clever, Ben, because if you're squabbling with a car that's clearly faster, you're giving away lap time. There's no point having that fight.
Yeah, absolutely, although they are squabbling over 3rd position in class, so that's points and prizes. There are only 5 in the gold category, which means even if you finish last in this race, you will still pick up 1 championship point for the real world championship, so it's worth sticking with it, and that is why we're seeing Nicolas Bart, who is 4th now, and Pulcini, who is last in that category, still with us.
Very, very big gap immediately pulled from Nicola Bart. But let's have a look here now at the front of the field. So while Sandy Mitchell has been sounding out an opportunity for a race victory, look who's buying in. It's the GRT Grasso Racing Team Lamborghini. A 2-way fight for the lead, become a 3, and very soon will be a 4-way.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we know how strong BMW are in the sim racing world, and we know how strong Lamborghini, especially in the ACC world, have been over the last couple of years. And so we're not just seeing these professional real world drivers, but we're seeing the influence of those sim racing teams taking effect. It's been difficult for BMW in ACC initially when we had David Pittard representing BMW. I remember him coming into the first round and really at sea. He'd never been on the platform before, he'd never been in the arena before, and there wasn't a huge amount of support coming from the BMW team. Now, 3 years in, they've got BS competition on site. Those boys are setting a car up for Verhagen, for Van Thor, and for Williams to deal with and say, this car is fast, you need to adapt your driving style to this, and then you'll be the winner, and then you'll be the leader. And that's what happened to Verhagen so successfully in Monza last year, and so far happening here. But Lamborghini are doing the same, and they are very much on par at the head of the field here.
Yeah, absolutely, helped by a very slippery shape and very long straights at Paul Ricard. Look what's happening there, that's interesting. So Christina's going to the inside, trying to break the toe of Van Thor behind, not give him an opportunity to do what the likes of Nicholas Nielsen's do and suck up to the rear of the car to put himself in a striking position. And Nielsen, quiet start to the race, but now coming alive in 6th position, keeps the car to the inside. Not enough racing space, but he wants to scare Acker off the racing line. Alex Acker does not scare easily.
No, Acker, the previous winner, very, very successful in the Fanatec arena. Nicholas Nielsen holding a slightly tighter line. He's obviously got the front end to be able to do so, and we'll see later on in the race when these Pirelli tyres are giving up their last, that those last couple of corners, especially after the long Mistral straight, the car moves around a huge amount more. You're not able to hold that tighter line that you might have been able to do earlier on in the race. And tyre wear then becomes a huge factor. The guys that have got better tyres underneath them can hold the tighter line, can cover less distance, and therefore put themselves in a good position to overtake. We are about to open the pit window, which might open an opportunity for the likes of Nicholas Nielsen to clear Alex Acker, and moreover, further up the head of the field, Sandy Mitchell to clear Nicola Verhagen.
Well, we've seen it so many times in this SRO Esports world, either in the online races or the on-site ones. Pit window time, strategy changes where big opportunities can be won and lost. Who approaches the pit lane faster? Who gets the car down to the speed limit quicker? Who gets the car back off of the speed limiter and onto the racetrack? And understands what kind of balance they've got underneath them when everything has cooled down a little bit. So Nick Nielsen, not the first time, not his first rodeo in the world of virtual motorsports, would be looking for the opportunity, I'm sure. Looking in the
inset there, you've got the Nicholas Nielsen Ferrari in his rig. There is Nicholas, and just behind him, a representative from Ferrari Competizione GT looking over his shoulder and potentially making the strategy calls as well analysing what's going on in the race to help Nielsen find a space on the track to put that car back on circuit after the pit stop in a clear position where he's got a couple of laps completely without anybody in front of him. He can bang in some lap time and maybe jump Alex Acker in the pits. And it's not just Ferrari doing that. There's Lamborghini guys that I can see from where I am on effectively the same kind of radio systems that you get on the pit wall of the real world race. They're all using Discord to talk to their drivers. There's a Dries van Thor move down the inside of Fabrizio Crestani to move up into third position, forces Crestani off the road. Are they still side by side over the stripe? They are, and Crestani holds on for the moment because Dries van Thor is now going to be on the outside line, and there's a slightly downbeat look on Dries's face. He's still going to try and go around the outside. He's still going to try and overlap into turn 2. Isn't the space there? That was, fighting.
Yeah, that was very, very brave from Dries van Thor there to try and keep the car in a risky position. He's in 4th place, don't forget, 3rd in his category, but Van Thor very, very interested in finding a way past. He wants that real estate because if you're the car in front, then you can set the pace, you can dictate what the rest of the race looks like, and that's not lost on the BMW driver, but not quite able to achieve it this time as De Jonge goes down pit lane as the first of our drivers to stop in the mandatory pit window, which is open now.
Drive-through penalties coming through, and stop-go penalties. Adam Etke has got himself a drive-through penalty for contact. We're still in lap 2, by the way, in the race control world, so they've still got lots to analyse. But it doesn't seem that there's been a huge amount of contact since we've got a field spread out. As Sam de Jong takes his Audi number 12 into pit lane to complete that mandatory stop. He's the first to do so from the tail of the field, and Nicholas Nielsen has got past Alex Acker. So that was a move into senior. Lovely move from Nicholas Nielsen up into 5th position then, but actually doesn't change anything for his points because it is still 4th in class, would you believe?
But good for Nielsen, and that puts a car between himself and his next class challenger, Drouet, just behind. And it's kind of, you want to make the move, but it's almost a little bit counterproductive to be fighting at this stage, because get down the pit lane, get the mandatory stop served, and give yourself some clean air, because you're losing time while you're fighting for position. But Nielsen, as we say, has been here before. He knows exactly how these things work, as Williams down in 8th place now in a bit of a squabble too. So expect, Ben, to see cars coming down pit lane.
Interesting that Williams is now back ahead of Guben and Heinrich. I'm sure Williams was behind those two a couple of laps ago, so something has happened there as we take a look at the replay and the pass down the inside, nice and clean, had the momentum down the Mistral, and the Ferrari moves ahead of the Audi, and there was a little bit of a sniff there from Alex Acker, but I'm sure he knew it wasn't really on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sensible sometimes to know when you've been passed and just allow the move to do. Keep the time lost to a minimum and then live to fight another day. A few of our cars now are electing to come in towards the beginning of the pit window, which is kind of contrary to what we've seen in the online world. People tend to leave it right to the very death to make their stop. So let's keep our eye on that one. And for everybody at home, the little green marker next to the number, that means pit stop cycle completed. Orange means you're still to make your stop.
So Alex Acker, having been passed, went straight to pit lane. He's the highest placed driver to have completed now his pit stop. The question is, where is he now on circuit and how many cars has he got around him? Dries van Thor down in 14th position. Dries van Thor has had an issue in the last couple of laps. That's one for the replay director to try and find, because the BMW was up in the top 4.
Yeah, I didn't see that on the picture, so I'm not quite sure exactly what's happened to the number 32. Hopefully we will catch that one in a minute. Callum Williams in the WRT car also still having that fight with Drouet ahead, and this is going to cut. If you're Williams, Alex Acker made the right move. You've got past, you compromise, pit. And if I was Williams now, that's exactly what I'd be looking to do and get out of this battle pack.
WRT, one of the very best at strategy calls in the whole of the Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe paddock. So much experience also with the tips from BMW and BS competition. Surely they will make the move. No, they don't, and they've done exactly the opposite to the Mercedes ahead. So Drouet comes into the pits for a Goddess ASB, and that gives clean track to Callum Williams. So that may have been an idea to come into the pits, or simply do what the Mercedes doesn't do.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. If you continue to do the same as what you've always done, there'll be no change. Pit at the same time, you're not going to get that position, but Williams will be delighted with that one, because I would argue he's got the pace at this moment in time. So now he's got 1, 2 laps, maybe 3 laps to give qualification laps. Try and build that buffer so when he comes out, he's not fighting for track position.
Alex Acker does have a 5-second hole between himself and Nicholas Kiergaard. It's actually 3 seconds now, so you'd expect him to be fast. So at the moment that's working out for him, but it won't work out for him if he catches that lone McLaren and then gets balked by him. So even though they're in different classes, the pace will be dropping off. Even if he gets past relatively fast, it will still be affecting that particular lap time. As we ride on board with Ayhancan Guven now in 6th position, because we've had a few cars be passed. And here is a replay of Dries van Thor. Right, he's come into the pits, so that's why he's dropped down to 14th position. But the problem is with that, as we saw in the first round, he hasn't registered as a pit stop in the game. So race control once again are going to have to do that. It was discovered, I think, post-race in Monza that was a glitch in the game rather than an actual pit stop. So maybe Dries van Thor has done this pit stop. It's just the game hasn't recognised it.
And I think, unfortunately, in these situations, you reach into the goodie bag of why could that have been, and then pick at random any answer, because it could easily be he's not fulfilled the mandatory requirements. It could be a glitch in the game as well. We'll hopefully find that one out before we come to the conclusion of this race, so we can keep you informed. In fact, I'm hearing Ben in my ear that Race Direction are going to assess and study that one for after the race.
Great.
Damn.
Yeah. I'll be in the bar by then. Ayhancan Guven now putting the pressure on Callum Williams once again. He's already seen the rear end of this BMW once before in this race and somehow lost ground to the WRT BMW. And again, as we mentioned before, different classes, so Callum doesn't need to put himself in too much of a compromised position.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? You defend so you lose time, but you're also increasing the risk factor significantly to be racing close together with another driver. So if I'm Guven, I'll be getting a bit frustrated. If I'm Williams, I would be putting my thinking hat on and think, you know what, let that Porsche go, I'll follow him, let's try and get lap time together, because we've only got 1 lap left of window.
So remember, Nicholas Nielsen was fighting with Alex Acker pre-pit stop. Acker got past, Acker went straight to the pits. Now Nielsen is also pitted, and we're waiting to see where he came out of the pits, but Acker jumped from the Struhe. And Guven's trying to find a bit of space down the inside. The door is opened by Callum Williams, and wow, lovely move from Guven, who just about keeps the car on the circuit. That was pressure, but also I think Callum Williams going, yeah, I guess you can go past because I'm in a different category and I don't really mind fighting with you too hard.
And Ayhancan Guven would have given a wave to say thank you if it wasn't for the fact he was seesawing at the wheel to keep that car on the track. Great driving from Guven, real committed, very, very nice balance of the car as well. And trust me, at those speeds in a Porsche, that is a very difficult piece of corner to get right, especially when you're making a pass on a rival.
Plenty of fans in the Fanatec arena this evening, including plenty of drivers that we're going to see participating in the Sim Racing Series tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock local time, right in the middle of the 6-hour endurance race. Callum Williams comes across the line, not pitting yet, moving up through the field as Verhagen now pits, as has Guven, as has Heinrich, with both the Porsches coming in together. Marius Zug, and a yellow flag I've seen on the top of the screens, and it looks like Pulcini again has had an issue, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's not been a good day in the office today for Pulcini, but that little Nielsen-Acker fight, by the way, the timing screens are starting to settle down, things are getting back into their groove, and it's looking like Nicholas Nielsen has won 4 seconds during that pit window, which goes back to what we were saying, Ben. The right strategy and the right execution can be a massive advantage for a driver.
Yeah, I think actually, I said Acker had jumped Drouet. I actually think he was ahead of Drouet pre-race anyway, wasn't he? So not too much of a problem. Race controller now on lap 6 and looking at Adam Etke's behaviour once again. This time with Erwin Bastow. We haven't spoken too much about Erwin, who's the GT4 European champion. Moved up with Santalok to GT3 this year. And he's got himself a little bit of sim racing to do as well, as Alexei Nesov, our championship leader, has come into pit lane. Also, I'm afraid, to serve a 15-second penalty So it's not going the way of the Madpanda Mercedes, who sits third in class right now. Here's Pepper with Nesov side by side for 12th, no, is it 13th position? And down the inside, they both have actually made their stops, so this is a legitimate fight on track, although they are in different categories. Jordan, yeah, that's exactly how Alexei Nesov felt. Like, get off my rear end, please don't knock me off the circuit.
And who would have thought coming into today that Jordan Pepper and Alexei Nesov would be fighting for 13th and 14th positions? Such is the level of this field here in this race this evening at the Circuit Paul Ricard Le Castellet in France. Nesov weaving like we've seen in IndyCar recently.
What did they call it in IndyCar last week? I can't remember.
Snake.
Was it just snake? Was it as simple as that?
Yeah, which is, it frustrates me as a fan. I don't like to see, but Nesov needs to do it to break that toe.
Jordan Pepper jumping up and down in his sim rig like he was in karting to try and get a little bit more speed down the end of the straight. Runs a little bit wide and down the inside, claims that apex that he so needs to do to make this one stick. Around the outside, Nesov can't hold it, and that is a change, a legitimate change, and there's a whoop from somebody in the arena. As 13th is now the way of Jordan Pepper.
Yeah, great little pass there from Jordan Pepper, committed, held on to the position as well. So 13th is his result, but Nesov fighting back again. Shows the car to the outside to give himself a bit of a sweep into the corner, but there we go. Pepper has that line covered, has the inside. Can Nesov flick back to the inside again to get the launch off the corner? Not too bad, and Jordan Pepper now has got some work to do coming down into T1.
Jordan Pepper will see on his screen that there's a little radar that shows us an overlap to his right-hand side with Alexei Nesov. Nesov, Mercedes, has got good grunt, and he's later on the brakes, tries to keep that overlap all the way around the outside. He's got it to go down the inside at turn 2. That is a lovely, lovely move from Alexei Nesov and Madpanda, and this battle continues.
Yeah, fantastic stuff from the Mercedes, but Pepper's not given up yet. Last of the late breakers into the left-hander, gives as little racing room as he can to the Madpanda car, but the Mercedes keeps it around the outside, becomes the inside now for Jordan Pepper, and that's 3 corners in the making, but job done.
That's the whole of the first sector side by side. Now they go into the second sector, which is nothing but straight line, and Alexei Nesov crawling all over the rear wing of that Lamborghini. He moves to the left-hand side, now into the slipstream. Not the same behaviour from Jordan Pepper than we saw from Nesov's weaving one lap ago. Nesov goes to the outside. We've seen him go all the way around the outside before in this position. Can he do it again? I love to see the respect between these drivers, though. They provide great entertainment when they race like this. No way around the outside this time.
Good bit of driving there, Ben, from both drivers. Nesov gets a good run through Bussa, but runs out of racing room. The downforce has been taken away from the front of that Mercedes a little bit by the Lamborghini, and that causes him to run deep. So now a few corners at best for Sandy Mitchell to get his breath, Jordan Pepper to get his breath back again as Nesov looks to mount the next attack.
Dries van Thor, by the way, has moved up to 3rd position now overall, and ahead of Fabrizio Cristani. So that is a change. I think Cristani may have made a big error on the last lap. Yes, he has made a big error. Or was that just the pit stops shaking out, perhaps? But he's down to 4th position. It's Verhagen who still leads, 1.5 seconds ahead of Mitchell, with Van Thor in 3rd. Cristani in 4th is the best of the Silver Cup runners. Acker is 2nd in Silver Cup, and then the best of our gold runners is Callan Williams in that WRT BMW, with Marius Zug 11th overall, 3rd in class. Oren Heinrich's been given a 5-second penalty as we turn our attention to Callan Williams, who's spent the whole race battling with everybody, hasn't he? And now looks to the inside of Thomas Drouet.
Yeah, good race so far from Callan Williams. Let's hope he can stay out of trouble as we come through the right-hander. Yes, he does, and that's a good bit of driving as well from Drouet to give him the space he needed. Drouet looks to fight back again into the next section, but Callan Williams has the line, has the track position, and has the advantage in the Team WRT machine.
Just looking out the window, I really wish that ACC sometimes would mirror the weather outside, because we've just had a massive rain shower here at Paul Ricard. If you are about to prepare yourself to watch the 6 hours tomorrow evening, variable conditions including thunderstorms and bright sunshine. There is really no way to forecast what's going to happen at Paul Ricard tomorrow in the real world weather. maybe in the virtual world as well, if we can mirror exactly what's happening outside right now.
Yep, 21 minutes left on the clock. Plenty of racing action. Again, a reminder for everybody at home that if you're watching, you have any questions, pop them in the chat in YouTube. Ben and I will do our best to find a gap in the action to explain any questions that you may have. So please do let us know.
A bit further down, D'Amato on the rear end of Nicolas Bart. Third position for Come To You Racing, the team that his father owns. And Nicolas moving himself from front-wheel drive touring cars into rear-wheel drive Audis and the GT3 category, the highly competitive world of GT3 racing. Come To You still doing touring cars, but just adding a couple of extra cars in the back of their garage. And of course they've got a load of Fun Cup cars as well, which one day, Monsieur Jean-Michel, I would like a chance to play in.
Yeah, absolutely. Rain's coming down outside now, but a quick one. We've got a message in from Guido Casate asking if the question is put is how similar is commentating on real races and esports? And Ben, on esports, we've got all this information in front of us. In real racing, often you don't even have a window.
Absolutely. And therefore you get a lot more information in the sim racing world, and there's the opportunity to have even more information than actually we really do get in the sim racing world. But ultimately it's still a race, whether it's virtual or real. There is still fantastic racing going on, and that just allows us to call it. One of the big differences in doing it from your bedroom and not doing it on site is you don't get to talk to the drivers, and you don't get to find out information about them as human beings, and you can do it in your underwear.
You could do this in your underwear, but you would not be invited back to the next round, I'm absolutely certain. So yeah, they are very, very similar, Guido, is the answer to that question. And both are entertaining in their own way. Racing is racing.
This is battle for third position, by the way, and it's getting quite physical. Jordan Pepper involved in it, but it's actually Alexei Nesov and Gazou who are the three. Oh, and with Pepper's spun around. And I think came with Alexei Nesov there, so Gazou has moved up 2 positions. It was third in silver, but it is no longer third in silver, I'm afraid. Jordan Pepper has been incredibly respectful with Nesov, so that must have just been a misunderstanding from the two of them, especially involving a third party.
And that's the unfortunate thing, isn't it? You can give respect to your rival, you can give them racing room, but when you're racing so close for so long, every single time you race that close, the chances of disaster happening increase significantly. And sadly, Nesov and Pepper both involved in that one. They've got running again down in 14th and 15th. We'll see if they drop further when the timing updates itself, but not ideal.
The reason for the pink... oh, well, there you go. Hello, there's us. The reason for the pink number on the left-hand side of number 4 for Fabrizio Castani is because he's just set the fastest lap of the race in his pursuit to close down Dries van Thor from losing that position during the pit stop phase. As we watch Thomas Drouet, and the red is marking out that that's the car that we are seeing. Here is Alexei Nesov and Jordan Pepper. What happened then? Side by side, Pepper's now dropped behind Nesov, and it's a little bit of contact there from Gazou, and then as he comes back on, oh dear, just runs too hot. And look, Jordan Pepper isn't trying to take advantage there. He parks up and waits for Alexei Nesov to get back going again, and they're still separated by 1/10 of a second, down in 14th and 15th position now. So great respect from Jordan Pepper. Love to see that. The two of them are having a great fight, and he's acknowledging that that was a little mistake. I wish we could enforce that in the real world. If you spin somebody around, park and wait for him to recover.
Yeah, and it's great sportsmanship, isn't it? It's gentlemanly driving. They know as well. They're here to do well for themselves and the team. They're here for the points. They're here for the cash prizes. They're also here to have a good race.
Yeah.
And they've enjoyed, I'm sure they thoroughly enjoyed racing each other. And when a third party is involved like that, it is so easy in a simulator where all your training comes from the real world, just to lose track of exactly where you need to brake. That wasn't a big lock-up and a big mistake. That was 2 inches later than normal, and that's the result.
And don't forget also, they all have to leave through the same door here.
Also true. When you've got a helmet on, you can be a lot more aggressive when you get out of a car, but when you're stepped from a sim rig and you've not got your shoes on, you are quite vulnerable.
The reason we got a yellow flag out on circuit is that I think Lorenzo Pulcini has parked up on the main straight there. He's somewhere out on circuit, but he hasn't pulled himself out of the game because, of course, he doesn't want to retire, but he's now been disqualified for doing so. So, unfortunately, he was either sitting there or he just left his car and hadn't retired and left his rig. Because, of course, if you do retire out of the race, then you don't get the prize money. And so we've got Drudy in the pit serving a drive-through penalty. He hasn't retired. The only one that has is Pulcini, and that is because he's been disqualified from the game because he spent too long stationary on track. That should, I would have thought, now clear our yellow flag.
Yep, hopefully so. You can see the yellow flag at the top of your screen, so keep an eye on that one for it disappearing. No safety cars, of course, in ACC, so we will have checker racing to the checkered flag as we're looking at Daniele D'Amato now in the 56 in the Porsche. Not seen much of D'Amato over the last few laps. Down there in 19th position, Nick Labart just ahead. So these two fighting hard. And again, Ben, the fight's been hard at the front, but it's all the way through the field.
There is Daniele D'Amato, 19th position, outside of the points in his particular category of silver. Although Owen Bastard, a couple of seconds up the road, probably not quite close enough to nab a position. And actually Bastard is 6th anyway, so he's outside the points too. If D'Amato wanted to get points, he needs to pass Sam de Jong, who didn't qualify very well, but clearly has kept himself out of trouble in the Come To You Racing number 12. He finished outside the points in Monza in the silver category. Now he would be picking up 1 point for that 5th position. So that's an improvement.
And that's the thing, different cars, different tracks, different comfort levels for the drivers in the environment, in the arena, in the simulation, with the car behaviour itself. So it does change from race to race, but also the same names keep cropping up at the top. It's interesting to me as a GT fan. Dries van Thor, 3rd position in this, absolutely outstanding in the real world, absolutely outstanding in the sim.
So Jordan Pepper has been given a 5-second penalty for contact with Alexei Nesov. For that contact we saw replayed. A little bit unfair considering he parked up alongside and waited him to recover. But there is also a drive-through penalty for Alexei Nesov, and that is not on my form yet. So we'll find out what that is for. But that has completely ruined Alexei Nesov's potential points scoring position, and it's going to drop him maybe even outside of the points. So his yellow flags are still flying on the main straight, even though Pulcini is supposed to have retired, and actually Drudy is also parked up in the pit. So maybe they're kind of slightly covering Drudy's car.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you say, drive-through penalty for Nesov, 5 seconds for Pepper. As I said earlier, the pit window's closed. There's no need to go in pit lane, so those 5 seconds will be added to Jordan Pepper's race time. And the drive-through penalty, could this be for track limits?
If it's not come from the human race control, then in-game there are penalties, but a drive-through penalty for track limits is quite a heavy one, isn't it? Because it does the game tends to be quite soft on giving out penalties for track limits. It tends to do 5 second, 10 second before you get to a full drive-through, which is going to cost them half a minute or more.
Yeah, look at the fight now at the front of the field. So Verhagen is still our race leader in the BMW. Sandy Mitchell has gone through almost the entirety of this race, just mirroring him, move for move, corner for corner, lap for lap. He'll be learning, will Sandy Mitchell, where that BMW is fast versus the Lamborghini, and where the driver is vulnerable possibly for a late dash for the flag.
I still would love race control to sort out if Dries van Thor is legally finishing this race or not, because at the moment he is on course for a podium position, and I need to do the podium.
I think he'd be quite keen to know the answer to that one as well, because he'll see that little marker saying pit stop not completed on his screen, and that's so hard for a driver as well when you've got some kind of, you've done a lot of sim racing, so have I, Ben. When you've got
It was very unsuccessful. Highly unsuccessful.
People can't prove it on a live broadcast, so you must say that you're fabulous. This is how these things work.
Unfortunately, I did the very first Lamborghini Celebrity Esports race, I think it was called.
I remember that one. Yes, I tried not to bring it up out of respect and politeness, but I do remember that one. But yeah, he'll see this information on his screen, will Dries. And that'll be off-putting for him because he'll be working that one out. His team will be talking to him, giving him their opinion. And at this level, any small thing that takes away from the art of driving quickly is disadvantaging you.
Let's get into some more social media and find out if you guys are chatting with us on our stream. Thank you very much for joining us if you are. Always great to have you with us. For the first of our 2 sim races from the Fanatec Arena, we'll have the sim racing drivers tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. local time here in France. 6 o'clock local time is when the 6-hour race in the real world begins. So you'll have to have 2 streams for watching both real and virtual coming into the night. The glorious month of June. In America it's the month of May, but in France it's the month of June. 6 hours and Paul Ricard kicks off a whole month of crazy endurance races in the most wonderful country of them all.
Absolutely. So I do have a social media question in from Sebs, and it is, how difficult is it for a real driver to switch from sim to car and back on the same day?
Yeah, and we were discussing this earlier, weren't we, that they tend to get a little bit distracted. We did do a race with the real world drivers only a couple of hours before their real race, and they did mention that braking points, that subconscious, not consciously, because these drivers aren't driving consciously, they're driving subconsciously and with feel, and the sim is different to the real world. It's very, very similar, but there are certain things, grip levels and things, that aren't exactly replicated because the grip level changes out in the real world, and it does change in the virtual world too, but to a different rate. So then the drivers will subconsciously have those braking points from the virtual race and might find themselves not completely correct for the real race. So they have mentioned that the best one I heard, and actually I appreciate it this evening, is I was dehydrated from the virtual race, and that's why I didn't perform in the real race, because it was so warm. It's been quite warm in the Fanatec Arena today. Thanks for the massive thunderstorm we've just had. It's a little cooler now.
Yes, it felt moderately unbearable, it has to be said, when we first started. We're just sat here talking. These drivers, they've got force feedback in the wheels, they've got the concentration of performing, the pressure of performing.
Sandy Mitchell almost looks like he's asleep, wiping his brow, such as the heat.
But even professional sportsmen, you're still exerting yourself in this scenario, aren't you?
I mean, Sandy looks like he's pretty chilled right now, but you see the amount of work that he's doing at the wheel, and all of that is work, and the heart rate will be pounding. He will not be sitting there super chilled like if he was on the sofa watching a movie. The heart rate will be higher, and I've seen a couple of sim races. Ford Zilla driver Pablo Lopez runs a heart rate monitor when he does streams, and it's 160, 170 beats a minute, higher than you might see in these real-world drivers. This is, by the way, the battle for the lead. So whilst we're answering your questions on social media, we should keep half an eye on this one, because this is for a huge amount of money, the win of this race, and it's 5 championship points versus 4 championship points for the real-world team. K-Pax Racing! K-Pax Racing and Rover BMW.
That was very close indeed, and I was just about to say, Ben, Mitchell's car now looks much more aggressive at this stage in the race. He's in a better place to launch his attack.
Alex Acker to the outside of Callan Williams. He really has had an action-packed race, hasn't he, Callan Williams? Defending quite heavily into turn 1. It's going to put him offline, it's going to compromise his exit, it's going to compromise his momentum, but this early part of the lap here at Paul Ricard, it's quite difficult to position your car correctly because it's a left and then a right and then a left. And again, a completely separate line from Alex Acker over Callan Williams. And just look how much speed they are losing as Thomas Drouet comes to join the party. Alex Acker slides down the inside and Thomas Drouet follows through. It doesn't matter for Callan Williams. He's still leading his category, but he does lose 2 positions overall.
And that was very, very clever from Callan Williams there. He got the snatcher brake, lost the car a little bit, then gave them room.
6.5 minutes left of this race. It really is coming alive here at Paul Ricard as the sun has now pretty much set in the virtual world. Sandy Mitchell taking the car nice and wide, swinging it back through the second apex and towards the last part of the lap. Just 1.5 tenths through the last sector point between himself and Neil Verhagen. Has that BMW eaten its tyres a little bit harder than the Lamborghini behind. It's a big, heavy car, so even if the BOP has slightly helped it in the early part of the race, it might hinder it in the latter half and the latter stages. And it does feel as though Verhagen is now placing that car in the middle of the road to compromise Verhagen. What he needs is Van Thor to join the party, but Van Thor is over 5 seconds back. If Van Thor was there, Mitchell would then have to look in his rearview mirror as well as looking forward, and it will be a little bit harder to deal with. So that's thunder and lightning outside.
Once again, yes, which is really not helping. It's hitting the loo and it's raining heavily out the window, which you can see. But Verhagen, by the way, something I'm noticing, is defending quite aggressively. He's going into a defensive posture almost a little bit too early, which is compromising his speed again, which is giving Sandy Mitchell an opportunity again. So if I was Sandy Mitchell, I would be full of confidence at this stage. Yes, you've got to get the deal done, but he's got 5.5 minutes which to do it, and that Lamborghini looks great.
Yeah, last lap of 55.0 from Verhagen and Mitchell, a 54.2 from Vries, Van Thor and Crestani. And Callum Williams back ahead of Thomas Drouet now. That's what we were seeing just there as we move back to that lead battle. And look how close. That is now less than a car's length. Defending heavily. Neil Verhagen holds that white line on the inside line. It's going to compromise him hugely for this nearly flat-out right-hander at the end of the Mistral straight. Sandy Mitchell tries a switch back. He's going to have a little bit of a tighter line. But again, there's not quite the space. And look how chilled Sandy is in his Fanatec rig. It doesn't seem to be ruffled at the moment. I'd love to see what Neil Verhagen looks like, because he is the one under pressure. Serious pressure right now.
Yeah, that Lamborghini looks absolutely beautiful at this stage in the hands of Sandy Mitchell. Really confident, really committed on the turn. He's not trying to seesaw at the wheel. He's not making multiple corrections. It's doing what he wants it to do when he wants it to do it, which is critical. In fact, coming back in a boost, he almost hit the back of the BMW because the front end was that positive on the Lamborghini. So I reckon Sandy Mitchell has an opportunity on this lap. It's closer than we've seen him down the backstretch, start-finish straight.
4 minutes. It is a 1:55 lap, so I reckon we've still got 3 laps in this. 3 more laps for Sandy Mitchell to find a way through. He looked strong in the very early part of this race, didn't he, that Lamborghini?
Yeah.
And then in the middle half, he just faded, settled into a rhythm. Oh, he's made a mistake. Oh, Sandy Mitchell off the road at turn 2, and he's suddenly lost 3.5 seconds. Is that the end of the road for Sandy Mitchell in his quest to win this race?
Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we call the commentator's curse. Yeah, real shame for Sandy, and that's now brought him into Dries Van Thor's sphere of influence as well. So Dries will be interested to try and buy into that Lamborghini. Question is, Ben, has he hit anything? Has he to a position where he can hold on to that second place?
Well, if you've hit something, you've got to have gone a long way off circuit here at Circuit Paul Ricard, such as the massive runoff areas that they have. So I think he should be okay, but you've got a good point about the tyres that will already have been heavily worn. Has he got a little of a flat spot? Let's see what happened. Did he get just too close to the rear end of the BMW?
Too greedy on the curve. That's just until the rear. That's a very, very small half slide. So in fact, I think Sandy will be absolutely fine in terms of tyre wear and damage. But the big damage, Ben, 2 minutes and 30 on the clock. It's now a 3.2 second gap.
54.4 was what Dries Van Thor managed last time when Verhagen and Mitchell did a 55.3. So he could still, if he can match Van Thor's pace, take a couple of seconds out of him, but it's not going to be enough with the amount of time we've got left on the clock to actually catch and pass, unless Verhagen's really struggling. And Verhagen's actually done a lap a second faster as he's gone over the stripe this last time. So without the defending, without the looking in the mirror, Verhagen is able to go faster than the 55.
So what Mitchell needs to do now is nail the fastest lap he possibly can to give Verhagen something to think about / something to worry about, force Verhagen into making a mistake of his own accord, because he's going to naturally, you kind of lift off a little bit at this stage because the pressure has been removed. So Mitchell needs to very violently reinsert that pressure to push Verhagen into making some kind of error.
Back with Callum Williams, who's got plenty of attention from our TV director today. leading that gold category. That's what that rig number is. It was Jean-Baptiste Simonauer who has represented the team quite often actually in WRT and picked up a couple of points, picked up 3 points last time out. So the full 5 from Callum Williams. I think WRT will be keeping him aboard the car, certainly for Spa, where he probably will form the third driver. But when we go to the shorter races, maybe Callum won't be part of the team. In the slipstream of Alex Acker. Alex moving around a little bit, as we saw earlier on from Alexei Nesov. Wow, that BMW has got some engine power and some top line speed all the way around the outside. The Audi looked a little bit twitchy on the apex, couldn't find a way through. I wondered whether the Audi was just going to slide sideways into him there.
Yeah, Callum Williams has been in the heart of pretty much everything, Ben, and again, still fighting, still hungry to try and make one last final do or dare manoeuvre. There we go, tied to the inside again. The BMW doesn't have enough real estate to get past, but Williams still on the pace.
Verhagen, 10 seconds to go in the race. He comes across the stripe, and this therefore will be the last lap for him to hold on. This is very different to that first victory in Monza last year, where he just checked out and disappeared. There is Verhagen in the centre of your shot, and now a couple of laps where he can relax that grip on the steering wheel. No longer has Sandy Mitchell breathing down his neck. Mitchell's going to have to try and do it again in Spa, with Van Thor in third position. Only 1.2 back, but with that question mark over why the game didn't recognise his pit stop. We saw him in the pits, but there are other things you need to do to make sure a pit stop exists and is registered by the platform, including putting that one lap of fuel in. WRT have been part of this since the start, so there's no real reason why they should have made an error like that. They'll know the regulations. If it was a new team, you might forgive them, but I don't think they would have made that error. So I'm going to suggest that, like we saw in round one, some reason the platform hasn't recognised it.
Yeah, very, very possible indeed. Stay tuned to social media, of course, to find out the results of that investigation at the end of the race. We look back now from Alex Acker's machine, 6th position. Callum Williams, man of all the drama so far this weekend. Closing in the BMW. Brakes a little bit early to give him the momentum and the run through the corner, but there is, annoyingly for him, an Audi in the middle of the track, so he can't use that advantage that is gained. And now to the outside to sweep back into the inside, but again, Alex Acker's Audi in all the right places.
Coming to the line then, Rover Racing BMW Junior of Neil Verhagen takes the victory here at Paul Ricard after a tremendous race, probably one of the best ones we've seen, and look how much it means to Neil Verhagen. It's hot in this Fanatec arena, and he really was put under so much pressure from Sandy Mitchell, who comes across the line, and yeah, he is done. Maybe he will be a little bit dehydrated from the end of the race. There's the BS competition of Arta Camera behind him. Sorry, is that Craig Schill or Arta Camera? It's Arta Camera, right? I did get it right first time. Dries van Thorp finishes in third position. Best of our silver cars, Fabrizio Crestoni, and coming over the line for the win in the Gold Cup is Callum Williams, 7th position. Marius Zug comes over the line for second in that class. We didn't speak about Chris Mills. Great to have Christopher Mies with us in the Fanatec Arena. Finishes 11th.
And a thoroughly enjoyable race has been provided by our drivers once again, Ben. Some great competition all the way through the field, and Ben's going to go now and talk to our race winner in a couple of moments' time. The final few drivers just crossing over the line. Jordan Pepper being 14th position. He'll have that 5-second time penalty, but he's won himself a 6.4 second gap between him and De Jong behind. So Jordan Pepper will remain in 14th. That is Sam De Jong now that we're looking in the Continental Racing number 12 Audi crossing the line in 15th position. So to recap, Neil Verhagen has won the overall pro category in Christini in 4th position overall, but first in class in the car 58. And Williams, after all of his excitement, all of the trials and tribulations, crosses the line in 7th, but first in the gold category. And that has been a rather exciting race here at Paul Ricard in indeed. So we're still going to talk to our winner. In fact, I can see the RF cameras turned on. Ben's getting himself in position. So when I hear in my ear that we're good to go, we'll hand over to Ben and Neil to find out from his perspective how what looked like a dominant race, but there was always a question mark of could Mitchell do enough to get back on terms and fight for that victory. And again, big shout out, these are all real world drivers. And speaking of which, Ben Constanduras down on the floor for the interview for our winner.
We have seen BMW take victory in the Fanatec Arena before. We saw Niva Hagen on the top step of the podium before, but this race, so different to that first victory. You have been working hard, my friend.
Yeah, it's hot in here, and Sandy had me under some pressure there, so I was giving it everything to stay ahead. I think I might have took my tires out a little bit too early. I didn't really have too much to hold back. I don't know what happened. I didn't really see. I just saw that I had a little bit more of a gap, and then I could take a little bit of a breather. But yeah, no, I was definitely working for that one.
The pressure was so big, even at the start of the race. Were you managing the pace at the beginning, and did you expect them to come back at you at the end?
No, I was pushing the whole time. I mean, I was flat out, mate. There was no holding back there. I thought maybe after the pit stop, maybe I could open up a little bit of a gap, but then I saw the way how fast he was coming, and yeah, he drove great, very clean as well too. So thank you to Sandy for that. That was great to see. It was really fun for me, but I think I've made my car wide enough for today. So.
And I think you've made a good position for Rover BMW to just put you in this car for the whole season. Stop playing this game of swapping with your teammates, because clearly, sorry Max and Dan, but you're definitely the one.
Yeah, I think we all have the pace. I've had 2 good rounds now. Obviously, the first one was pretty standout, but yeah, no. I mean, this was again thanks to the BS guys. They've been here. They've been helping us. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible.
Let's get to the podium. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much, Neil. And you can see just how warm Neil is, how hard he's been working. These drivers, you sat down in a cockpit, but you're working the wheels, you're working the pedals, but you're tense in your muscles because you're racing at the absolute limit against a really high quality class field of drivers. And Neil Verhagen really did show himself to be the class of the field, converting the start into an early race lead and never gave up the front of the field through the pit window, through 60 minutes of competition of the Circuit Paul Ricard. And these are our Fanatec Esports GT Pro Series results, with provisional, of course, Neil Verhagen for Roa Racing as our race winner, from Sandy Mitchell with Dries Van Thor in 3rd position. Fabrizio Cristani is in 4th, just ahead of Nicholas Nielsen, who makes up 1 to finish 6th, just ahead of Alex Acker in 6th position. Callum Williams had a great drive, involved in many of the dramas over the course of the race. Is 7th overall. Thomas Drouet in 8th. Lauren Heinrich in the Porsche, in the first of the Porsches, in 9th position. And Marius Zug rounding out our top 10 finishers. Zug, of course, was the winner of his category in gold last time around. Comes home 10th overall. This time just ahead of Christopher Mies and Guven in the Porsche. Again, only 2 Porsche in the top 12. 13th place goes to Cesar Gazoo for Boots and VDS, just ahead of Jordan Pepper in the Iron Link. Sam de Jong is 15th from Nicholas Bart for ComTU Racing 15-16. In 17th is Daniele Di Amato, just ahead of Erwin Barstar. Alexei Nesov, after all of those dramas, finishes 19th ahead of Adam Etke, another one of the boosted VDS cars. Nikolai Kiergarden in the Garage 59 is 21st position. Gilles Magnus, Matteo Drude and Leonardo Pulcini do not finish the race, but finish 22nd, 23rd and 24th in the provisional finishing standings. Remember, a few of those drivers have question marks against them. Dries Van Thor being the higher of the finisher. Did he complete that pit stop during the course of the race, or was that going to be something that needs to be investigated? Our team of stewards behind the scenes, just behind that wall behind me actually, will be going through all the data, talking to the team, talking to the driver, watching the replay on board. They've got all the information they need, and they'll be assessing, then cross-checking each other's work and be absolutely confident they know exactly what occurred during the course of that one before we can finalise these results. And a big thank you actually to all the people that work behind the scenes here at the SRO Esports, to the broadcast directors, to the race directors, to the stewards, to the organisers, to the drivers and the fans as well themselves. It's great to have everybody coming together to put on what is a fantastic show. And we'll be back again tomorrow, 9 p.m. local time, for our Sim Pro Esport race, where works professional esport drivers go at it in a 60-minute race. I'm just hearing in my ear that a couple more minutes and we'll be ready for our podium celebration and our award-winning drivers and their prizes. So don't forget, hashtag SRO Esports, get on social media, let us know what you thought of the race, ask us any questions that you will try our very best to answer them and share your thoughts on, for me, what has been an absolutely cracking opening encounter the weekend. And now, folks, it is time for your podium, presented by Ben Constanduros.
Absolutely. Let's get this podium underway then. We have confirmation of our result after a question mark for third position. So please welcome onto the podium Dries van Thor for WRT and BMW. Third position confirmed after that question mark over the pit stop. Congratulations, Dries. As you can see, the man has worked himself hard. In second position for Lamborghini and K-Pac, Sandy Mitchell. Second position for the Lamborghini, fighting against the BMWs, but it was BMW that came out on top for Rover Racing BMW Junior Team, Neil Verhagen. And please welcome to the podium to present the checks, Stefan Rattel, the founder of the SRO Motorsports Group. Third position to Dries van Thor, 5,000 euros. That was a decent amount of work this evening. 7,500 euros to Sandy Mitchell and 10,000 euros to Neil Verhagen. Plenty of points that have been collected in the various different classes, with 5 for the win, down to 1 for 5th position. Across all the different classes, it really has been probably one of the best sim races that we've seen here in the Fanatec Arena, thanks to the respect that these boys give each other and the fantastic side-by-side action that we see out on circuit. Thanks again to Paul Jeffrey for joining me in the commentary booth. We'll let the boys walk in front of our camera. Off you go, Sandy. And I'm going to say thank you for joining us online. Make sure you watch the real race at 6 o'clock tomorrow local time. And the sim racing drivers will be in the arena at 9 o'clock local time. Do you want to say bye-bye?